So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore dan selamat datang di acara webinar pada hari ini. Apa kabar para peserta webinar semua? Kami harap semua yang ada di ruangan webinar ini senantiasa dalam keadaan yang sehat. Saya ucapkan juga terima kasih kepada para peserta yang sudah menyempatkan hadir dan bergabung di webinar kali ini. So, good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone doing today? I hope all of you are doing well. And we want to thank everyone who already spare your time to join this webinar. And welcome to the Design Thinking Playbook and Best Practices webinar. We're super excited about organizing this event. And in this webinar, we will share how the methodologies in the Design Thinking Playbook can help businesses transform and adapt in the current era, as well as the best practices of design thinking implementation in the business, social, and academic sectors in Indonesia and the world. We have two speakers today. They're Michael Lewrick, PhD MBA, the co-author and the Design Thinking Playbook, and Kosasih MBA, the co-founder and partner of Innovesia. So before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Kosasih. I'm the founder and chief executive officer of Open Innovation Hub. So I'm the moderator for this webinar, and I'll be moderating the program rundowns, as well as facilitating the Q&A sessions with the speakers. And I'm going to introduce to all of you the two speakers who are already joining us in the webinar room. First, Michael Lewrick, PhD MBA, the co-author and the Design Thinking Playbook. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here joining the webinar. We really appreciate it. So, you are now based in Switzerland, right?
Exactly. Actually, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So we have a beautiful day today. It's nice and warm. I think it's like really a nice spring day here in Zurich. And I'm really happy now to present the Design Thinking Playbook now. It's translated, for the Indonesian market. And I'm really proud, that we have now this copy in a local language. And I look forward to this webinar and also answering your questions. So please, state all your questions. I'm happy to answer all of them.
Okay, awesome. So we're very excited about the launch of your book as well in Bahasa Indonesia version. And I believe that a lot of the audience here are very excited to ask your questions about it. Okay, so everyone, Michael is joining us from Switzerland, and there's I think about 5 hours 5 hours difference between Indonesia and Switzerland. And the next speaker is Kosasih, MBA, the co-founder and partner of Innovesia. So how are you, Mas Dani?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me here. And also I'd like to say hi to Michael. Hi, thank you also for participating and to be speaking in our webinar. Really appreciate it as well. And it's an honor to join into this virtual webinar with you.
So I believe that you're also excited about this webinar, right? And I believe that you already prepared a great presentation accompanying Michael's presentation on the Design Thinking Playbook as well. Okay.
Looking forward, yes.
Okay, so before we start, I'd like to address a couple of things about how we can actually enjoy the webinar. First of all, this session is recorded, and then untuk kepentingan dokumentasi, webinar ini akan direkam oleh tim panitia, and all participants will be muted during the session. So selama sesi, semua peserta akan di-set dalam mode tanpa video perorangan dan tanpa suara. Kemudian, and then participants can write down questions in the Q&A panel. Peserta dapat menuliskan pertanyaan di kolom Q&A yang nantinya akan dijawab oleh pembicara setelah sesi presentasi. Do not share or show any inappropriate content or offensive content in Q&A and chat panels. Para peserta diharapkan untuk tidak memposting atau menampilkan konten yang bersifat sensitif atau kurang pantas di chat maupun video. Kemudian, please ask relevant questions during the Q&A sessions to the speakers, okay? Pada saat sesi tanya jawab berlangsung, mohon untuk menuliskan pertanyaan yang berkaitan dengan topik yang dipresentasikan kepada pembicara. Jadi pastikan pertanyaannya itu ditujukan kepada pembicara, bukan saya ya. Baiklah. So here is the Zoom webinar looks like on your mobile screen or desktop screens. The chat panel used as a way for panelists and participants to communicate with one another. Jadi untuk chat panel ini digunakan untuk komunikasi peserta kepada panelis dan seluruh peserta dan sebaliknya. And then there is a Q&A panel. If participants have questions related to the speaker's presentation, participants can write questions on this panel. Jadi kalau misalnya para peserta ada pertanyaan yang berkaitan dengan presentasi dari pembicara, silahkan ditujukan di panel Q&A. Okay, and here's the rundown for our webinar session today. We are going to start with the presentation from Michael Lewrick, and then followed by the presentation from Kosasih, and then we're going to have a moderated Q&A session afterwards, and we will end the session with a couple of closing remarks. Okay, I'd like to introduce you to the organizing partners for this webinar. First, Innovesia. Innovesia is an innovation platform for corporations, startup, SME to generate and execute their ideas through human-centered innovation and agility. Innovesia transforms the people in the organization by changing their mindsets and equipping them with the right tools to innovate. And there's DTP, is an open community of creators, entrepreneurs, scientists, design thinking coaches, facilitators, corporate leaders, managers, and innovation leaders. DTP is interdisciplinary and creative. DTP is an open community to promote interdisciplinary knowledge exchange. And there's Open Innovation Hub, or OI Hub, an innovation ecosystem that aims to help organizations solving business, social, and sustainability challenges with open innovation approach. OI Hub provides services resolving on agile innovation consultancy, open innovation incubation, and online trainings on technical innovation development. And there's another one, InnoLab, an innovation lab established to serve as a center of excellence in developing capacity and competence of students, communities, SMEs, and corporations, and government institutions in developing their innovation. Okay, so we're going to start with quiz first. Okay, this is a quiz, a quick quiz. But this is not an exam, okay? So before we start, I'd like to understand from all of you. I'd like to ask a few questions. I want to know about your opinion in design thinking. Okay, so participants, you can access the questions on menti.com on your gadget by scanning the QR code on the screen, or go to www.menti.com and enter the code on the screen. So has anyone joined the Mentimeter yet? Let me check. Hold on. So please join the session. Okay. Please go to www.menti.com and enter the code 97818738. The code is 97818738. So are you ready for the question? This is we're not going to score your answer. This is just want to understand about your understanding on the topic that we're going to talk about in this webinar. Okay, so we're going to start with the first question. In your opinion, how do you describe design thinking? So what is design thinking? Okay, please go to www.menti.com and enter the code 97818738 and key in your answer to this question. I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer this question. Okay. So has anyone joined in and key in your answer? Let me check. 1 minute. Okay, again, there's no right or wrong answer here. So just write in any thoughts that you have about design thinking. Let me check. Okay. So next, okay, has anyone joined in the menti.com yet and key in your answer? Okay, if you have not, okay. So we're going to continue with the second question. The second question is, hold on. How do you implement design thinking in your life? So how do you practice design thinking in your life? Please again key in your answer on menti.com and the code is 97818738. Okay, so everyone can join in. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. Okay, if you have, I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to write the answer on menti.com. And then we're going to show you the answer that is generated from all of you. Okay, awesome. So I'd like to ask Arno to actually display the answers. We're going to look for the first answer from the question 1. What is design thinking? Okay, you answer design thinking is a term used to represent a set of cognitive, strategic, and practical processes by which design concepts are developed. Awesome. User-centered problem-solving tools. Customer-centric best method so far. A method to provide solution based on customer perspective. Process to understand. Process to understand. Oh, okay. To understand the divine problems to create solution, yes. And then for me, design thinking is about manage about our ideas and modeling creative. Okay, can we scroll down, keep scrolling down, Arno, please? And then the way our mind works when we construct something, an iterative process approach to solving problems that have multiple solutions. Awesome, okay. So we're going to look, thank you so much for your answers. We're going to see the other questions answered, okay? And we see the answer for the question number 2. How do you implement design thinking in your life? Research before take action or comment, walk the talk, and then listening to our stakeholders and empathize their problems. By doing small improvements at home to have a better home, finding solutions in some business cases. I teach design thinking, I apply design thinking in my research projects, questioning people around me about my research, whatever it is. Keep on learning, explore, and act. Constantly learning how to do incremental and radical innovations. I can implement it in my life by learning how to communicate better with the people in my life, but mostly within my work by getting feedback and creating better systems for efficiency. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your answer for the questions. Thank you. So we can actually move on to the next one. So everyone, to all participants in this webinar, you will get a chance to receive a Bahasa Indonesia copy of the design thinking playbook. So we're giving 3 copies, okay? We're giving 3 copies to 3 lucky participants who will, who submitted questions to the speakers during the Q&A sessions, okay? And then you will receive a Bahasa Indonesia copy of the design thinking playbook. Those lucky participants will be chosen by the speakers directly. So be sure to write down your best questions, okay? You can actually shoot the speakers with your burning questions. And then we will announce the book recipients at the end of the webinar. Okay, so I think it's time that we have been waiting for. We're going to listen to the first presentation. Speaking of design thinking, in a short moment, we will have an expert who share more about the topic. So let me introduce the first speaker, which is Michael Lewrick, the co-author and the design thinking playbook. Michael Lewrick has worked very intensively in recent years on the mindset that enables us to solve different types of problems. He's the author of the international bestseller, The Design Thinking Playbook and the Design Thinking Toolbox. in which he describes the mindful transformation of people, teams, and organizations. He works intensively with universities and companies and places the self-efficacy of people in personal and organizational change projects at the center of his activities. In recent years, he has expanded his toolbox for designing business ecosystems. As an internationally recognized expert in the field of digital transformation and the management of innovation, numerous companies have developed and scaled growth strategies with his help. Okay, so before Michael starts, I want to inform everyone that you can submit your questions in the Q&A panel using the following format. Please write down your name, your organization question, and then whom you address the questions to. For example, name David, company PT Indonesia Merdeka, and then your question, and then you address the question to Lewrick, Mr. Lewrick. Okay, so we will select a few questions to be answered by the speaker after the presentation session. Now, let's hear the speaker presentation from Mr. Michael Lewrick. Okay, so Michael, the time and place is yours.
Excellent, thank you very much. So let's get things started. I can share, that's good news. Very good. So thank you very much again for having me. And it was very interesting to see the questions about design thinking, how you live it up, and actually what is behind. And I will also talk a little bit today about, what is the mindset behind design thinking, and give a couple of examples from methods and tools from the design thinking playbook. And I'm also really happy, if you have questions afterwards, there's my LinkedIn profile, so please reach out, connect, and you have any questions about this webinar or the content from the book, I'm happy to answer, to just write, and usually I'm quite quick responding, because I think it's quite important if you have some questions about the methodology and the tools that you get feedback and you can apply it in the appropriate way. So I think everything was already said about my person. Just about the book, we published this book in 2016, and usually I start writing always my books in German because a really precise language, and then usually we have translations into English and many other languages. So right now we have over 20 translations of the design thinking playbook, and also the other books about design thinking follow the same path. And so hopefully we get also the other design thinking books published very soon in all these local languages. And really today I would like to focus on the design thinking playbook and what the content is all about, and also give some best practices I was basically experiencing over the last 15 years, where I was really involved into the design thinking mindset and methodology. So I like to start with the Indonesian version. So thank you very much. It was actually published 28th of April this year, and I got already so much feedback, from the Indonesian community. A large organization reached out and say, look, we are in the middle of the digital transformation, and design thinking comes really one of the core capabilities we like to apply. We like to build these capabilities with our employees, and I think it's a good thing, because I know Indonesia very well. I was living in Singapore for 3 years, a couple of years ago, and I was traveling to Jakarta many times for business, and also of course for vacation and like fun trips. But it was like really a nice place. You have all this potential, all this creativity, all these people with this kind of motivation to create something. And I think it just needs a little bit more facilitation, a little bit of tooling, methodology, and you can really make a big difference, with your corporation, startups, and your organization you're applying design thinking. So I think it's really kind of a good starting point, having now the book translated and also educating wider part of the society about the design thinking mindset. So when it comes to design thinking, we had already kind of really good definitions you have given, but for me, I like 3 elements in design thinking. First of all, and this is the most central aspect, is the mindset. It's how we think, how we act, how we approach the problem, how we look into the reframing, how we really find the appropriate problem we're working on. And the mindset is like kind of the core element to be successful in design thinking. And it's a little bit underestimated because from the outside, people see always these sticky notes we put everywhere as kind of these fun workshops. And they think design thinking is sticky notes and having like nice warm-ups, but there's much more behind, you know, and this kind of whole way of thinking differently about the problem space, you know, it's also how you engage with the customer, with the user, and also creating kind of solution over kind of an iterative approach really helps make a big impact and come up with much better solutions in the end. Then, of course, there's a design thinking process, and this is also sometimes misunderstood because people think about process input and output, you know, kind of this linear way of putting something into the process, the processing, and then you have an output. And in design thinking, the process is more like kind of a way to find orientation where you're standing. And this is really important because it's a different way of looking into this process model. So you have like these 6, 7 steps, depending which kind of model you're applying. And usually I use the design thinking process telling my teams, look, we now in a phase of understanding, for example. Look, we are in the process of defining a new point of view. Look, we are in a process, we're like kind of the next step of prototyping, or we testing, or we improving our prototypes, or in the end of the entire design cycle, now we're reflecting about how design thinking was working, how we did apply it in our project work. So for me, the process is really kind of a reference where we're standing and has nothing to do with like input and output. So that's like, this comes to the process. And of course, there are a lot of tools in design thinking. And this is also quite nice because this toolbox has expanded over the years dramatically. So I remember like 15 years ago, what kind of tools I have used and what I'm using right now. And when you look into the design thinking playbook, you have all these traditional tools like empathy maps, you know, like frameworks to engage with customers and do like interviews and many other things. But you have also kind of these kind of new tools, you know, expanding a little bit kind of the way how we apply design thinking today. And one of the tools I'm using heavily in the digital transformation is combining systems thinking and design thinking. And this basically was merging in a concept I call ecosystem design. So we're looking into like entire ecosystems of creating new value propositions for customers. And this is probably the next thing for this decade about, you know, looking into like really radical solutions, innovations for organization, because you're collaborating, you're co-creating with other companies, and then basically you're bringing together all these capabilities to create a really nice solution and products. So basically tools, yeah, there are many of tools and they're expanding, and I think it's quite important that you know at least kind of the basic tools applying design thinking, and there's also not kind of a linear way of applying them. So this also takes a lot of practice, you know. Usually it takes a couple of years to get a good understanding which tools you should apply at which moment. And all I can say, you know, practicing it. You can't learn it out of the book by heart, you know, and say this is how we do it, and then apply always the same tools in any project. It's more like you have to create this feeling about what tools are appropriate at which time in the design thinking process. And of course, you know, the underlying mindset is really important to make it successful in the end. So the design thinking mindset, probably most of you know these kind of core elements about the design thinking mindset. There's like elements like show, don't tell, so make it really tangible. Of course, it's human-centered, so we really focusing on the human values. We like to be really clear what we're doing. So this is also what I mentioned before with the design thinking process. Look, this is what we do at the moment, but also be very clear about what you like to achieve while prototyping, testing, and showing something. And then, of course, it's all about experimentation. So we're building a lot of function experiences, getting feedback, improving. And in many cases, now, if we're not getting positive feedback, the solution might then not work. So we also kind of get them out of our way and start from scratch. So this kind of failing is also one of the major important parts in the design thinking methodology. So of course, be mindful of the process. So where we're standing in the process, I mentioned this already. And then of course, action, you know, it's not like we're gonna plan forever, you know, make all these planning meetings. It's more like, look, we have time as a team together, you know, let's see what we can create, you know, make it tangible, get feedback, and then go into the next iteration. I know like large organizations really tend to have all these planning meetings and nothing's happening. So this is also kind of a cultural change that you come together with your team, you force radical collaboration, and you produce something while you're meeting and not just having a meeting for planning the next meeting. So this is also kind of something I can recommend, change it a little bit, your behavior, in your teams, but also within your organizations to make a big effort and kind of big impact out of the design thinking activities you run. Then of course, radical collaboration. This is like bringing people together spontaneously, but also from different kind of backgrounds. So I usually using a concept like T-shaped people and people with different thinking preferences, and they're usually assembling one team. So in the past was many times that we were just bringing in the expert group. So 1, 2, 3, 10 experts, there was a, you did it before, please solve the problem. In design thinking, we usually tend to bring in different views. So we might like to have 1 or 2 experts, but it's sometimes much better to have like just people with a lot of creativity coming from different backgrounds and trying to solve the problem. And then later on, you see with this different perspectives, you might get also kind of more radical solutions than just having the experts working on the topic. So the design thinking process, I was mentioned this already, is understand, observe, point of view, ideate, prototype, test. I'm always adding a last phase about reflection because I think it's quite important that we reflect how we work with our teams and also how the projects are going, because without the reflection we can't improve. And usually I run like after every cycle, after every iteration, after larger workshops, I run a kind of a feedback round and asking everyone, how you're feeling, what are the lessons learned and how can we improve for the next session. And usually we're really transparent about these reflective exercises. And this really helps them to build up kind of a better understanding about strengths and weaknesses within the team, but also improve, how we collaborate as a whole. When it comes to the double diamond, just put it in a different perspective, how design thinking works. The left side is really solving the right problem and also searching the appropriate problem to solve. I'm usually saying, we spend like 80% of our time in finding the right problem. And it's really an important part, because if you don't identify the right problem, it's really hard to build purposeful solution, and this is also something a lot of organizations are missing. They're just going into the phase of building solutions without investigating the problem space. And this is also something happening now with all the efforts being agile. So the agile methodology has like overlapping parts with design thinking, but in the end of the day, it's kind of an iterative, quick way to building something, but you're always missing out the part of investigating the problem space. And usually I say begin at the beginning, and beginning means you're going back to a problem statement, you're identifying the user and the customer, you're building up empathy, you collect as much information as possible, you're looking into the assumptions you have, you're testing them already in an early stage and not in a later stage when you have already your prototype, because you can test your assumptions, right in the beginning, and then basically later on while you're building and prototyping, you validate, and you prove your prototype. And I see many companies, they just using kind of ideation, and they have great ideas and then basically start to build something and they're trying to test the assumptions while they build the experiments and while creating prototypes. And I think it's too late, you should really start at the beginning with investigating, looking into your assumptions, and then basically begin at the beginning. When it comes to like the micro and macro cycle of design thinking, most people know the micro cycle about design thinking, and I've also seen a lot of large organization companies who are saying, well, we go through the micro cycle of design thinking once and we are done. And I can tell you this is not how the setup should be. So you go many times through the micro cycle. It's always kind of understand, observe, point of view, ideate, prototype, and test. And you see it on the macro cycle, we do it many times. When you ask me now how many times should I go through the process, I can tell you I don't know. It really depends on the solution you generate, depends on the complexity of the problem. But usually, I think at least you should do it like 3, 4, maybe 10 times, you know, to come up with good solutions. And then of course, you know, you have to focus on a certain stage to build the final prototype you like to put into the market. On a later stage, you're transforming in an MVP. And this is also one of the most important parts, what I call like the crone zone. And the crone zone is basically something happening here between all these macro cycles you're doing with like creating new ideas, creating functional prototypes, creating prototypes out of benchmarks, you know, having like the dark horse methodology applied. And then, you know, you're coming to the point, you say, well, which kind of solution should we really implement? Should we, you know, be more concrete in our final prototype? And this is one of the toughest ones, because in opening up, you know, and creating a lot of possible solutions, it's quite easy. So everyone can do it. We have like tons of brainstorming sessions, you know, we build something, and at the end of the day, we might have like 150 solutions potentially ready to launch in the market. But the most important part is, you know, to say, what is the core, what is core function, core experience, like core final solution, core value proposition, you know, we really like to go forward, and we put all the resources in to build it and to test it in the market in a proper way. And this is kind of what I call the crone zone. It's not easy, you know, and also it's a kind of recipe, you know, to select the best idea. It's also kind of not written down. It's more kind of you're feeling in your stomach, you know, backed up from all the interviews you did, from all the testing you have been performed, you know, all these elements comes together. And then you say, look, in the end of the day, you know, we have a tick box, it's visible, you know, it's viable and it's desirable, because, you know, our customers and users really like to use the solution, and then usually on a good path, you know, for having a more radical and good solution ready to implement in the market. On the right side, you have also what concepts very important is the implementation plan. I call it how to bring it home, because it's totally underestimated. If you have your final kind of prototype, you know, it's still kind of a prototype. It's not launched into the market. And how to bring it home looks also into kind of the stakeholders, partners, you know, activities you have to do to make it also successful in the market launch, but also gets acceptance within your organization. And this is something you can plan right from the beginning. So I usually say, if we have defined the problem statement, you know, we define and create already a stakeholder map saying, you know, what are the potential people in the organization we have to get in our boat of implementing? What kind of partners do we need to make it successful? What kind of people, you know, can help us to make it really kind of a great product in the end, and we should involve them as soon as possible. So this kind of the how to bring it home is one of the things I'm starting really early in the process, and then later on you're much more successful because you know already kind of the people you have to engage with to implement and to create real innovation in the market. So when it comes to tools, you know, I mentioned already there are many tools, and in the design thinking playbook, you know, you find probably over 60, 70 tools, you know, you can apply in design thinking. But the most common ones are like defining the design principles, using the 5 whys technique, creating personas, journey stages you can outline. So of course, like future personas, if you like to develop something like 5, 10 years down the road, we can do like shadowing and observing people. So there's possibilities of benchmarks in different directions. And of course, you have all these canvas models. And for these canvas models, probably the best known is like the business model canvas from Osterwalder, but there's also kind of the lean startup canvas. I created also over the time a couple of canvas models for my workshops and interacting with my teams. So for example, have one canvas just dealing with the ecosystem design, I have one canvas for the growth and scale, because later on it's not just building the prototype, but it's also kind of scaling your solution. So you also have to consider a couple of these elements to be successful. And all these things really helps, you know, to be a little bit more structured, to have the same language with your team and put it into a way, you know, that everyone recognizes what you're doing at the moment. And these templates are also really helpful when you work in an online virtual environment. I mean, there's many tools also like Miro, Mural, Collection, you know, you can easily put these templates and run ad hoc online design thinking workshops without much preparation. And this is also the beauty, and this also what we have used over the last 1.5 years with all these lockdowns and virtual meetings, templates, you know, to facilitate all the larger groups in a most efficient way, because it's different. If you're in a physical space as a facilitator, you observe like all the people in the room, but sometimes in the virtual setting, it's a black box, because you can't split yourself into like 5-10 breakout groups. You really have to go one by one, listening in, you know, giving kind of facilitation advice, you know, what are the next steps. And the templates give a good structure that the team can start working without much help. And then it's much easier also for the facilitator to go into the sessions and help out creating good solutions. So this is an example of the design thinking canvas. Now this is how it looks like. This is kind of a meta canvas, including everything. So I use it for documentation. So this is kind of my big canvas. Everything is feeding in. So the initial research, the problem statement, everything we did about describing the persona, looking at the critical function experiences, how might we questions, you know, later on the solution space, documentation of different ways of prototyping and also outcomes of the prototypes. And finally, the prototype coming close to the solution you like to implement, but also kind of the requirement for like your MVP, you know, putting it into the market and testing it in a real environment. It's quite important. And you see like the last, one of the last few, like number 12, you know, the lean canvas also helps to validate the business model, you know, and documenting again all the experiments and custom insights you have collected. So this is just an example about canvas models you can have for documentation, and it's really based on, you know, the design thinking process, the double diamond. So everyone can easily refer back and saying, look, here's a problem statement we use, this kind of first solution we're building up. And this also helps for communicating and also making it transparent what you have achieved over the entire design cycle. So Toolbox Gallery, you know, we mentioned already, it gives us discount on these tools. We'll later on give you like the web page where you can access the 50 tools for design thinking. You know, all of them have like detailed descriptions, just have a numbering to find your way into the models, and also give kind of a good way for documentation and using them in the physical space, but also in a hybrid or virtual setting. So if you like to put these things, you know, this is like the QR code. The web page is dt.toolbox.com/shop, you know, in Innovesia as the code to get the discount. So easy to remember, but I will show you this page also a little bit later on my final slide if you not have time to capture these things. So when it comes to like the whole design thinking part, you might ask yourself, if you're not familiar with design thinking or you never used it, you're saying, well, I'm not a designer, you know, and why should now I start thinking like one? Because this is not kind of a natural behavior. Because when we look into our time at school, university, it was exactly the opposite. There was like one solution for any kind of question they ask us, you know. And I remember about my school time, you know, it was like a test, you know, and they have not written exactly down what was written in the book from the professor, you know. There was no way to get full points. So we were learning by heart, you know. There was usually one solution which was appropriate to get full points, and there was not much space for like being creative, thinking outside of the box, you know, being curious about new things. And in some disciplines, this is actually quite nice, because in math, for example, physics, you know, you should probably be strict about what you're doing, because there might be only one outcome. But when it comes like a business solution, when it comes to new products, new services, new value propositions, designing complete new ecosystems, you know, to creating really unique value proposition, end-to-end automation, here we need also creativity. And there's not only one solution, there might be 100 possible solutions. And we really have to go back and find the appropriate problem. We have to interview, we have to find the customer needs, and then build something. And from my experience over the last 1.5 years, you know, customer needs have changed tremendously over the pandemic, because, you know, we have been applying totally new behaviors to our daily life. And for example, I started to order all my food, it was delivered. I was starting to buy like clothes online, I never did before, because usually I enjoyed, going to the shop. And I did like many Skype, Zoom, MS Teams meeting with my bank insurance company about, getting advice for investments and doing many other things. So a lot of things have changed, and this is also something I can encourage all organizations and teams, update your personas, because I have seen organizations, they created persona concepts like 5, 3, 10 years ago, and they're still using the same personas, and then they're wondering why they're not capturing the right pains, gains, and jobs to be done. And this is something really you should do, update, go out again, see how the behavior of your customer and user has changed over the last 1.5 years, and then basically start from scratch, building and creating new solutions. So when it comes to the mindset, I really like the saying, the beginner's mindset, because in design thinking, usually we're not looking into the expert mind and the expertise from the experts. We're more looking into kind of an open way of discovering something. And this is also depicted on this illustration or this picture. Kids usually have the tendency to explore, they have no experience, they have no expert knowledge, and they discover by experiments, they do something, they learn out of these things, and they're really open about testing out things. And this is something we need in design thinking. It's kind of, you're landing on a different planet, outside what we can imagine, and you discover new things, because people might be green, they have different behavior, and everything is new. And we should also try to apply the same kind of skills to observe, to understand in design thinking. So be not too focused on the assumptions you have, and throw them out and start from scratch, exploring the space and looking into details and asking why. And then basically you get all the insights needed for proper design thinking. Again, I was thinking it's quite important, again, to show the difference between design thinking, agile, and the lean methodology, because as mentioned before, the agile kind of way of working, is sometimes a big umbrella, and people say, yes, we do also kind of design thinking, but for me, it's totally different story. And I put it like really in 3 buckets. For me, we start with design thinking because we like to extract long-term value, And agile is a way of developing and test it in a really quick and rapid kind of way. You do iterations, you're saving costs, you're getting feedback, but you're building in a quick way. And then basically there's also kind of the whole lean movement, this is also kind of established already for many years, of running your organization lean and product develop product creation and also kind of production. And this is like a different story. So please, always go back and say, do we really have design thinking in our HR methodology toolkit, or we just trying to have ideas and we implementing in a quick and rapid way, and not going back and really looking into the purpose, into the original problem statement, and creating something unique. So that's just quite important, to distinct along these 3 elements. And I'm always emphasizing these things, because many times, people think HR is the same like design thinking. So when it comes to like team transformation, I think this is really one of the important parts in the digital transformation. On the left side is basically what we have seen in many large organizations over the last 100 years. So it's more like this command and order system in place, and what we like to achieve with design thinking and with a new organizational setting is having this team of teams approach. Really trying to align teams, gives them like kind of some idea of their own big bold objectives, applying kind of the idea of creating something, you know, and they run everything on their own efforts and their own responsibility, forming like the teams they need, bringing in the capabilities they need, coming up with good solutions. But still you need kind of the overall strategy, of course, of the organization. But as long as the strategy is formulated in a really good way, and you have like a North Star to follow, and you have like all the kind of transparency around, you know, what we like to achieve. Usually teams are really good in creating good solutions for what you like to achieve, but gives them the freedom, you know, gives them the possibility to collaborate across the silos we have in large organizations, and forces kind of radical collaboration. And it makes a huge difference about the outcomes, because people then not just hanging around in the expert groups, are really reaching out and getting in the capabilities they need to be successful in design thinking. So there's always a question about, can design thinking behavior be trained? You know, so how can I get into the design thinking mindset? You know, how can we look into the process model, how we can apply the double diamond, you know, how we can use all these tools. And there's definitely a big yes. You know, you can train your employees about the design thinking mindset, you know, but you know, it's might take a little bit longer than like 2 weeks of training, because from my experience, usually this transformation takes 2, 3, up to 5 years, that people really accept a different way of working. And you know, we can't blame, because you know, everything in our organizations in the past was designed not to be creative. You know, this was kind of functions, job descriptions. There was like kind of measurements at the end of the year based on financial results, you know, based on things not dealing with innovation or this creative part we are trying to achieve at the moment. So let people, you know, experience this new mindset, you know, take time, you know, and I think the most important part, live it up. You as a leader, as a manager, as a, you know, kind of having your team together, live it up on a daily basis. That's the only way that people will follow you, accepting it and saying, look, this becomes our daily routine in collaborating and working. I put together here like 5 bullet points, you know, about accept, learning, apply the hunt and transport philosophy, you know, and I think it's quite important that you really, when you start hunting for the next big market opportunity, give everything purpose, you know, and purpose comes along with, you know, we know our customer needs, we do something for a bigger strategy, we like to achieve something. And this is also a problem with the agile framework. You know, a lot of people think, you know, if they're working agile, being busy the whole day, iterating, you know, and never coming up with a good solution, you know, they perform well. But, you know, basically, if you're just being busy and doing iterations and there's no outcome, you're not successful, no? But if you know for what you're doing something, you know there's a problem space, you know your user, and you start to build something purposeful, you know, then basically you get really good outcomes in the end. Then of course, never go hunting alone. I mean, I was already talking about teams, you know, bring different capabilities together in your team. And also when you go out, you know, interview people, never go alone. You know, it's much easier to be like in a group of 2 or 3, so someone really can take notes, you know, someone can build up empathy with the people you're interviewing, and maybe someone's just observing the whole situation, and then later on you discuss the outcomes, because there are so many things you can capture while interviewing, you know, and should not be just written text in a structured interview way. It should be more like exploring together with the people you're interviewing the problem statement or any prototype you're presenting. And this, I think, is really one of the most important part, essentials in design thinking. Then of course, don't give up too early. You know, it's also kind of when we work with iteration, there's of course failure, you know, there's of course the idea of creating something and then basically improving it. So it always takes time. So don't give up too early, because as you see in the illustrations on the left side, we always assume some, you know, outcome in the beginning of the journey, but we're always ending up on a different kind of solution, you know, because over the time we're learning, we know we're building something, and then we have a good solution in the end. So it's always worth doing all these iterations, and don't give up. You know, this is I think also quite important when you're applying design thinking. Then, of course, don't confuse transport and hunting. So it's really quite important. Are we in the phase of ideation, of creating something, or are we more in a phase of putting together a new point of view, or we are in a phase of like building a prototype or reflecting? So really kind of declare your behavior, what you're doing at the moment, because otherwise people might be confused if you are in a brainstorming setting, creating new ideas, and other people like to focusing on the next point of view. So really be clear with your teams what you like to achieve next in the design thinking cycle. Then, of course, I mentioned this already in the beginning, bring it home, deliver results, and plan already kind of how to bring it home in an early stage. I think this is also important to make it successful in the end. And all these kind of things really help to train people about the design thinking mindset and also to establish design thinking within the organization. So when it comes to like the entire framework, from the problem identification, MVPs, building up business ecosystem to scale a solution, we put together this framework with 6 steps. So we always start with design thinking, double diamond, problem solution space. You can always add research, and I think this is also quite important that you validate a little bit the market. You know, you get kind of external reports in. I think there's nothing against these things, and I really can encourage, you know, use research as well of validating in an early stage. At the same time, you know, what I was applying now for many years is a combination of design thinking and big data analytics. So in an early stage, you know, run your analytics on the data, and at the same time do your understand, observe phase and design thinking, and then come together and share these outcomes. Because usually, you know, if you do only one of these things, like design thinking or big data analytics, you're getting not the same kind of insights as doing both, obviously. And of course, you know, it's also quite important to use all the technology we have ready at the moment. So big data analytics is one of the things, you know, I can really recommend to use in an early stage of the design thinking process. Then, of course, as it comes to co-creation, invite other people, invite other companies to co-create. I think it's also quite important. And I'm usually using the lean startup methodology to create like the business model and also to structure a little bit my MVP. And usually one of the biggest challenges for design thinking teams is the transformation from the final prototype into the requirements for the MVP. And this is also something you should do really carefully. So go back what you have achieved over design thinking, like your critical functions, critical experiences, you know, also like future requirements, focus on the core value proposition while creating the MVP, and then basically it should be kind of a smooth transition from design thinking into the lean startup world. And then usually later on, we're looking into the design of the business ecosystem. Many solutions, you know, products and services you build don't need any ecosystem because it's just like a single product you like to put in the market. But as mentioned before, we see heavily that companies trying to create like something unique, and then you need different capabilities and different partners within the ecosystem to make the solution happening. And especially when it comes to like products and services integrated in a wider solution. So one example is if you're using like voice interaction, you know, and have a lot of services behind, there's no screen anymore. So it's just like one time you're saying, I have the wish to eat tonight, you know, in an Italian restaurant, and then basically you pick up with your taxi, you know, the reservation at the restaurant, so the payment process, the drive back home, and everything is automated and basically operated by different actors in the system. So this new way of interacting with devices, and also kind of the future of the digital kind of engagement with services, products, and like core value propositions needs kind of this collaborative approach, because you as an Italian restaurant owner or you as a taxi driver, you must be part of this ecosystem to have business in the future. And basically it's really centered on the customer needs, because this might be even now after COVID-19, there's all this kind of better awareness about digital interaction. You know, we'll see more of these solutions coming along, and people might see it as kind of the regular way of doing it, you know, just interacting, for example, with a voice device. And then, of course, the last step is scaling. You know, scaling is also quite important. So there's also kind of models and frameworks out there, you know, to have like a hook with the customer, that they're coming back to your platforms, they're interacting with you on a daily basis. And this is really needed, you know, first of all, to collect data and apply like data ideation for new products and services. And at the same time, you know, you like to create some network effects out of the partners you have within your ecosystem to spread the solution. So the business ecosystem design is like really kind of the preparation of having exponential growth and scale with your solution on the later stage. And here it really gets like into a totally different mindset in defining growth, you know, and defining how these network effects are playing in, how the value streams are defined within the ecosystem, and all these things basically create now a successful solution in the digital space. So when it comes to like the traditional company and the digital company, we were growing up 5-6 years ago, this picture, and I still use it in all my books because I think it's still really valid, you know, what happening in the past and how we transform into the digital age. And basically, you know, you see on the left side all these things we know from the past. So product-centered development, traditional silos, organizational structures. We see like we were focusing on like competition and analyzing the competitor environment. We were looking into like physical supply chains, and we had like fragmented solutions and a lot of intermediaries, you know, to run the entire show, especially like the internet, you know, developed over 20 years ago, was really heavily kind of occupied by intermediaries because, you know, it was not trustful to operate in the internet. So you have all these platforms for selling your products, for getting information, and all these kind of digital platforms we have been seeing over the last 20 years, you know, they're more or less like intermediaries, giving you kind of trust, giving you kind of a service to operate in the digital world. And now we see over the last decade a shift, you know, from this kind of product-centric into more customer-centric. So this is how design thinking was really heavily used in the digital transformation. We see more like agile collaboration and the agile mindset in large organization. We see how companies making use of the network effects. We're looking into like the digital ecosystems, you know, what I mentioned before, bringing different actors and capabilities together to create a unique core value proposition. And of course, the next level will be also enabled by technologies that we have really decentralized end-to-end automated systems, you know, but I think we're still experimenting with these systems and it's not ready to go. And I think one of the core technologies is blockchain, distributed ledger technology will help really to make the move. And we're experimenting already for almost 10 years with distributed ledgers. And I think we're coming over the next 5 years really to like core applications, you know, to run like automated system on distributed ledger protocols. So this is a little bit kind of my way of seeing the future, what's coming along. I think a lot of things happened already, you know, and some companies have like already a great maturity in applying it, and other companies are really in the early stage of switching from like product centric into customer centric. But I can just emphasize, you know, customer centricity, it's always core. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you like to go into like a ecosystem play. It doesn't matter if you like to create new product services. Always start, you know, with the problem statement, investigating the customer needs. It helps a lot to understand what is really in the market, because you can always create something, you know, and build like the biggest digital platform, a lot of functions. But in the end of the day, if no one likes to use it, no one likes to use your service, don't get the value proposition, then basically it's not successful. And that's also the reason why we put a lot of emphasis in the beginning into the problem space, investigating what is really appropriate to align and to bring to the table. So when it comes to my last illustration, you know, I'm just looking time-wise, you know, 45 minutes almost over. So we put together like this model, you know, about data analytics, design thinking, system thinking. And this is for me like kind of design thinking 2.0 zero, because just design thinking will probably not lead to good digital solutions. So as I mentioned before, I'm using big data analytics and design thinking, and I'm using systems thinking for the ecosystem design. And basically you should switch, while you're designing, with all these kind of mindsets and methodologies. So if it needed to collect first large data sets, and getting kind of insights out of data, please do so. If you need to investigate, observe, do it as well, and then basically over the cycle, the different ways of applying those elements to be successful. And even in the end, this comes to like your final product. There's a lot of data you can do, like prediction, say, look, we see this product will probably two years in the market, and then we see new technology, or we need like new functions. So many things of using all the data in the kind of the later stage of predicting. And of course, the system thinking part is important for like complex digital systems, everything related to platform, business ecosystems. You have to apply system thinking because it's so complex, and you have to break it down in like smaller pieces to understand, and then basically put it into a larger scale. And that's the reason why I'm using all these kind of elements, data analytics, design thinking, and system thinking in running projects in the digital transformation. So for the business ecosystem design, that's just very quickly, it's also written a full chapter in the book. We really using kind of the customer needs. We go into the core value proposition. We design first how the system, the actors look like. We're defining all the value streams. We're looking into the benefits for these actors, because business ecosystem just will be successful if all the actors in the system have benefits, and then basically we creating kind of a first iteration of creating kind of a possible ecosystem, and then we go into the validation with the business models. And there's also one concept I introduced a couple of years ago, it's a multidimensional view on business models. And this is also quite important, because most people struggle already to find their own business model for the platform or service they like to put into the market. My perspective is if you like to initiate or orchestrate any kind of business ecosystem, you also have to think about all the potential business models, for your actors in the system. And not only one, offer them like 2, 3, 4 to make money. And then basically you can outline all the benefits being part of this ecosystem. And this really helps to convince about your approach and have these capabilities within your system. And the second part is really, they like to get something out of it. No one will join your business ecosystem just because it sounds nice. In the end of the day, we like to get value out of the system. And like really this view helps, to define, but also to convince people joining into your business ecosystem. And then of course, the last part, the realization of the business ecosystem, is quite important. And I use a term called minimum viable ecosystem, similar to a minimum viable product, MVP, to put a system together with like the minimum amount of actors, testing all these value streams, testing the core value proposition. And then basically, if this is working, then we go into the mode of scaling and looking into exponential growth of realizing the solution. So what I think is also quite nice, basically you can have later on all these slide decks and presentation, use kind of a personal self-check while doing design thinking, always reflect, what is needed. So if you're really a good problem statement, are you engaging with the customer? Are you doing prototypes? You're testing them, you're building something. Are you visual, what you're doing, but also kind of have you the right people in the team, are you interacting with the user while building, while approaching them? And of course, also for the realization of any product or services, do you have the right partners in place, to make it real? And this little kind of five questions, helps, all the time, saying, well, actually we left out something, and maybe we have to do more interviews with the customer, we have to do more prototyping, or we have to find the appropriate partner. So that's just kind of a little kind of cheat sheet, to do design thinking with your teams. And this always helps, also for the reflection process of you really applying the design thinking mindset. So books on design thinking, so the middle one is now translated, and there are 2 other books. We have a new book, the Design Thinking Toolbox, and it's also referring to the 50 tools. You get the discount of 50%. Hopefully this will be translated as well. Otherwise, there's with Wiley the English version available, and there's a new book coming out about design thinking for business growth. And the design thinking for business growth is really focusing on the part of business ecosystem design. So we put in 320 pages together, how to create a business ecosystem. And this is probably also what I think it's really the core capabilities in the next years. So final slide. Thank you very much for having me today. I think there was a lot of input about the design thinking playbook, but I hope it was inspiring. So again, please reach out over LinkedIn if you have more questions, and you see also kind of the web page and the discount code for the templates. Thank you very much. You're mute, Tina.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Michael, for sharing with us about what we can learn from your book, as well as how we can basically transform our organization and the way we innovate with design thinking. It's very, very insightful. Yes, I believe that there are a lot of people already posted questions on the Q&A panels. I think they're quite excited, getting more insight from you. But then we have to wait until the Q&A session. Now we are going to listen to the next presentation from Danny Kosasih. Let me just read the profile of Danny first. Danny is the co-founder of Innovesia, an accelerator to help corporations, startup, and organizations to build and execute their innovative ideas. He is also a founder of Didik.co, a digital education startup that helps executives, entrepreneurs, and educators to develop their expertise in the interest area. Danny has more than 19 years of professional and executive experience in various industries: banking, pharmaceutical, consumers, and technology, leading in the field of strategic planning, business development, data analytics, commercial, and digital innovation. One of his passions is education. Danny has been actively teaching for more than 20 years as adjunct lecturer at the Indonesian top business schools, such as University of Indonesia, Faculty of Economic and Business, MFA BUI Business, and then Prasetya Mulia Business School, Business Bina Nusantara Business School, and IPMI Business School Executive Education. Okay, so I'd like to inform everyone again. You can start posting your questions at the Q&A panels with the following formats. Okay, your name and then your organization. Post your questions, as well as whom do you address the question to. Okay, so now without any further ado, we will start listening to the presentation of Danny Kosasih. Hi, Mas Danny, are you ready?
Hi. Yes, I am ready. So thank you again. Thank you, Dina, for the brief.
Yours.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. Hopefully everyone in healthy condition, and hopefully everyone also in a very good mood to follow for the next session that I will present about the practices of design thinking in Indonesia. So in this presentation, I would like to share about a lot of experiences that I had within my professional and executive years, and also when I am now as a consultant to help my clients in order to provide a good structured way of creating and developing and also executing the innovation within the organization and also to their customers. So first of all, that I think this is the one that already also mentioned by Michael, that when you need to put the design thinking in all the innovation tools that maybe you have already known about. So design thinking is best when you like to gain the insight from your customers and to understand the problem space, to solve the right problem, and also to provide the right solution. And then if you like to go deeper and further for more a comprehensive solution, you can use other tools like business model or then startup or even agile model. And design thinking can also be in conjunction or complementing one to another from all these kind of like innovation tools. So what we had that using this design thinking already started from 2014 when we started our community as makers, and then we cooperated with a lot of institutions like at America in Indonesia, Jakarta. And we also provided about the design thinking method to the participants of hackathons, big data hackathons sponsored by MediaTrack in 2015 and 2016, and even also in one of the biggest makers community event at that time in 2015 by GE, General Electric. So we help on how to conduct the right methodology for them to create a solution in just 2 nights or maybe less than 2 nights. And also we had a lot of experience in building the model and prototyping using our design, 3D design printing since 2017. And again, what I like to share in this moment that cases in Indonesia from myself and also from my own company called Innovesia. So first of all, I was the head of commercial excellence back in year 2010 to the year 2017. And at that time when I had this kind of like moment of practicing the design thinking back in 2016. I did it internally, and I taught my team at that time, consisting of sales force effectiveness, sales training, and also data analytics on how to provide the good solution for our sales force. So that case actually was, at that time, we were evaluating the overall process about our sales force on how they can promote our products to our customers, which are doctors. But then we found out that maybe along the way, all the training methods and also materials that we already delivered to them may not be as effective as like what we see in the field in reality. So we need to have a reality check to see how punctual our sales process has been implemented in the field by our sales force. And we had a lot of analysis, including about the sales target, comparing to the sales achievement. And we found that why we couldn't achieve the sales target like what we expected, even though all the teams, all the sales force already been trained. So that's why I travel with them. So I took a ride with them, follow them wherever they go in 5 cities, Semarang, Jakarta, Surabaya, Bandung, and Denpasar. I took a picture about what they were doing at that time and how they delivered the promotion to the doctors. And I told them, okay, along the way, you don't need to be acting idly. So I just like to observe you and they just pretend that I'm not here. So just do whatever you like to do and let me just see on how you do it. Okay, so just don't mind about my appearance and even my existence, just let it flow. So I just like to observe on how they like to provide the training material that we already delivered to them and how they approach the doctor. So let me tell you the story about how a medical representative in pharmaceutical industry, they have to wait the doctors until the doctors stop their practicing. So just whenever the doctors had the time to meet all the medical representatives, so that is the golden moment that we have to go for a product promotion. And then I asked another thing. This is kind of like a simple thing. It's just like a tips and trick. Yeah, if you like also to conduct design thinking whenever it's possible, face to face. So I asked them, okay, please show me what inside your bag. Okay, how do you manage all the call cards? Yeah, that you need to withdraw, and then you need to also ask the doctors to sign it up, because at the time we were not using any digital digital gadget yet. So we were still using like a pen and paper to have a proof that the medical representative already gone to the doctor and get their consent for the report to be inserted into our system. So whenever I saw a lot of samples from our medical representative, there are many kind of like a variation on how they manage their call cards into their bags. So some of them manage to have it in a very proper way and also a very good way, but some of them are very messy. So a lot of things that I need to say that, okay, maybe this is the moment of truth. If we go to the reality and we understand in the field on how our sales force behave, and also to take a look in a day of their daily activity, we can understand their pain points. Yeah, let's say that we provided them with a lot of like product materials, not only just one product, let's say in hypertension, but also the other product from diabetes, from acid, from gastric acid, etc., etc. So how could they even have a time to be punctual whenever they like to see a doctor, and also to provide them with a really good promotion using the promotion materials and also using the call card that we provided to them. If everything is so messy inside their own bag. So we came up with this kind of like results, yeah, from the field. And then we gathered a session with my team, and we come up with one thing that we need to understand as well on how the medical representatives should spend their time waiting the doctor outside their practice room, and then also on how to position themselves whenever the doctors get out of the room, and then to present the product that we have them to present. So, and then in overall, we try to define the jobs to be done of our medical representative, because internally they are our customers. So how can we help them to be more prepared and to easily manage all the time that they have efficiently to complete their daily tasks without all the hassleness of getting everything in a sufficient way because of a lot of things they have to prepare. So how can we manage it more properly? So using a lot of ideation and also prototypings, and we did a lot of iteration as well, we come up with a very simple solution. It's just like on how we provided them with this kind of like what we call as My Powerful Toolkit. It's like a easy to manage agenda with a binder inside it, and then they just can insert and also to draw the right material whenever they see the doctors. So this one we standardize, and also we put inside again into the system, into the training material, and also on how they should behave whenever they like to see the customers. And then not only just stop at providing them with the toolkit, but we also learn on how they like to put in their daily activities report into the system. What went wrong, and also what are the things that really painful for them to insert all the daily activity report into the system. And then we learn about how they like to see the result of their sales achievement, and also the result about the customers that they have visited into a really good understanding about the UX and UI. So we did again this design thinking process, and then we applied it to customize the system that we gained from regional office, and then to find a good way on how, from the medical representative point of view, to easily understand and capture the things necessarily for them to create a report. Because the most important thing for us, whenever they can create a good quality report, it means a good data for us to analyze and also to make decision. So after all of the design thinking projects that I conducted internally when I was working at a global pharmaceutical company in Indonesia, and then I thought this is a really good methodology that I can also apply in so many industries as well. And then we started Innovesia, and Innovesia once was a innovation, creation, and incubation company using a lot of design thinking, and now we're moving to more broader way of providing the open innovation to others in any industry as well. And we had a lot of experiences like conducting the design thinking to help the district head or bupati on how to grow and also to develop the district economy by involving the farmers, traders, the local SME and laborers, the community from local, municipal, and then to district, and even also we ask the involvement from the provincial officials. So at the end, from the district head, we delivered a lot of projects for the economic development of the district. And we also did a lot of mapping the stakeholder who like to be involved into this project for the economic development, and also to provide them with external helps coming up from startups as well, and from international institutions on how to create a really good ecosystem for the economic development to the district. Another thing that this is actually our one of the big projects that we got in the first term of after Innovesia established, to help UNICEF to conduct to adolescents in 5 cities, understanding about how they see and experience the first menstrual event, and also on how to understand about what will they do if they got already encountered the first event of menstruation. So when we conducted this study to 5 cities, we talked to adolescents, male and female. We lowered down our tone, and then we befriended with them, and we asked them to tell us what is their point of view. And we're using a lot of cards, comics, and also caricature to understand from their language about their emotions and how they like to be seen as a adolescent going to be more mature. Because a lot of myths happening in many areas in Indonesia about menstruation, and something that we need to tackle about the communication to the female adolescents who just had this experience of having the first menstruation. Hygienically, where should they go? And then why should they report this to their parents and also maybe to the teachers to get the right aid on to how manage their menstrual period and so on. And we don't want to get to be more like older people to them, because we want them to tell us whatever they want to tell us. So we like to be their friend at the time when we conducted the research to them. And the other thing that when we also got this project from one of the biggest SOE banks in Indonesia, so we help on how to create a roadmap to help the SMEs within the bank's customers on how to be more creative, to develop their product presentation, and also to create a good product caption in e-commerce platforms, in local and also in international. So we went to 2 districts in Sleman and also in Banyuwangi, and we talk to them, and we observe what they create, what they created, and then what are the businesses that they're doing, and how we can help them to create a better product presentation on the e-commerce platform. So a lot of things that we've done in here, and not only just about the platform, but also we help out to create the overall presentation and on how to promote the products to the e-commerce platform. So we did a lot of like explorative interview, a lot of in-depth interview, and also observation. We even went to a lot of SME centers in these 2 districts, and we took a lot of pictures, understanding the overall environment and surroundings, and to find out a lot of things to help them to promote more, to promote better about their product. This is for a B2B case for a gas holding corporation in Indonesia. So at that time, they asked us to help them to incubate an existing product actually that they like to develop into a new service to the existing customers. So coming out from a new additional products or new features to increase the overall revenue. So we had this in 6 months of project with 3 months, 2 until 3 months of field research, and also we asked the client core teams to follow us and also to join us in the field research and to find out about the B2B practice, to understand about their customers' needs and wants. So we started with a good design principles to have all the workshop conducted internally first to make the participants understand what we will do in the field and what we will see from our customers' point of view. So this is the first thing that really very, very important that we experience whenever we like to conduct a project with our client. And last but not least, when the pandemic hit, we also at the time we were in the middle of conducting a project with the biggest Islamic bank in Indonesia. So when we move from physical and face-to-face field research to virtual using video conference and online tools, we did a lot of also IDI to understand about the customer's point of view. And then the task was that to increase the number of accounts and also to multiply the revenue by 3 times. We conducted this in 6 months, and at the end, the result is they launched a new service and also a new design of mobile application to target the customers that they like to serve more. So we did a lot of like interview for empathy by using it by online, and a lot of things that we found out from the extreme users and also the extreme leaders on which one that really wanted only to use a service from an Islamic bank, and which one is kind of like whatever the bank services will be, they will just use it. So we have those 2 extremes as our interviews, and we conducted it by online to get this empathy. And the other thing that this is maybe just a good moment to inform that we will soon commemorate our first Design Thinking Center in Indonesia, located in Kabupaten Tulang Bawang Barat in Province Lampung. So everyone is welcome to go to visit. So hopefully the pandemic will over soon and we can go all there to conduct a workshop. And also Michael, please feel free to come to Indonesia, and then we will take you to this Design Thinking Center. Okay, so last but not least, okay, so some lessons learned in practicing design thinking in Indonesia. So the design part, before the design thinking is really important. We have to understand what are the things that we need to look into and how we can also find the right respondents and right customers to be interviewed. And then when we go to ask them, we have to respect them because our values, Indonesian values, we have also to pay respect to our counterpart and also to our interviews as well. And when we like to ask them, ask more to be like a qualitative researcher and go into a deep diving, understanding, exploring, and to be more like what Michael said before, to be more like a child, yeah, looking from as a child from a beginner's eye, from a child eye. And then from the ideation that for us, I think it's better to do a lot of quantity, yeah, rather than quality, because later on we can select and also to screen out which idea maybe not yet be fit into the right problems that we're looking for. And then the other thing for the interview techniques, this is something that we need also to be more aware that we ask for stories, not just for a confirmation, looking for like a yes or no question to be asked to our interview. And the other thing, Indonesian people like to create anything and very creative. So whenever you do like an offline prototyping, pen and paper, carton, easily used and favorable. But in online prototyping, I think sketching with PPT is one of the easiest way of doing this prototyping. And if the respondents or even the clients are quite like advanced in using technology and digital, you can use Miro and G slides. And again, also this one coming from Michael, just recently launched on how to help us conducting the virtual design thinking workshop. So you can also download this, and Michael can also inform you about the link to download this guideline. So that's all from my presentation. Hopefully it can give a lot of information and also share experience with all of us. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mas Dani, for the presentation. You know what, I think like the participants here are, you know, they already posted a lot of questions on the Q&A panel. So I think we can just start right away the Q&A sessions. So Michael, how does the time look like for you? Do you have enough time to answer the questions? We're not going to answer all questions, but I just want to make sure that we pick like, you know, enough questions to be answered.
Perfect. So you moderate and pick one, and then we go into it.
Yeah, I think I can pick I'll pick the questions for you. So I think we're going to prioritize the questions more for you, and then, you know, some for Dani, but then we're just trying to manage it to be fair between you and Dani. Okay, so let me start with the first one. Is from I think it is already answered, but then I think you can just like elaborate a little bit. It's from Pak Yusuf Setiawan Syukur from BPKRI. His question is, what are the differences between design thinking and agile team organization? Is design thinking a part of agile team organization, or is design thinking and design sprints related? For both speakers. Okay.
No, that's an awesome question, you know, and you know, design thinking was developed like 55 years ago, you know, and we were starting to using this mindset for radical collaboration, you know, building up teams of teams, you know, having all these kind of ways of new ways of working more or less already established for a long time. And then basically, you know, over the last decade, you know, we realized, you know, this way of working, you know, comes really important in the agile development of products, you know, and then basically agile was kind of used as a term, you know, to define all these behaviors between teams, collaborating, co-creating, and then basically, you know, became kind of a mix, you know, and this is basically, you can't say now, you know, it's kind of when you work agile, this is the same like design thinking. For me, it's like overlapping, you know, you're using the same principles, you're using the same method and tools, as mentioned before, I think it's just more important that you really start at the beginning. So start with the problem space, start investigating the customer and user behaviors, creating point of views and prototypes, then start working agile. But the overall umbrella, it's the same principle, it's the same mindset. And I think there's not like, is it A or B? It's more like, you should try to see it more holistic and incorporating the entire mindset within your organization, and then you most likely be successful in transforming your organization.
Okay, so I hope that answer your question, Yusuf Setiawan. Okay, so can we move on to the next question? Okay, I found a very interesting question is from, I think her name is, hold on, wait. Her name is Afin Pokadas. Her question was about, what is, okay, there you go. Afin Pokardas from Thinkers X Innovation Agency. So Thinkers X, where would you see as the biggest limitation for design thinking? And then also, where can he or she get your book?
Okay, I think the biggest limitation to design thinking is the amount of data collected and the amount of people we're reaching out, observing. And I see this many times that people saying, well, you just have talked like 50 people or 20 people observing, having deep interviews, and how can you create a product for like 2 million people? And this is probably one of the constraints. At the same time, I'm opening up and saying, well, you can use big data analytics in combination with design thinking and basically having both benefits, together and creating more insights. And this is something, we can do nowadays with modern technology. So use social media data, use kind of your own kind of pool of creating data, reaching out and then combine it. And basically one of the constraints about not having enough, people feedback, not enough quantity in your research, it's actually overcome by combining both elements. I think this is the biggest hurdle in the beginning, that people always say, well, look, you have only talked to a limited amount of people. And then the second thing is, what I think is one of the greatest concerns is that people not applying design thinking in an appropriate way. They doing a kind of design thinking, and then basically it gets wrong. And this is always the problem with mindsets. You really have to understand, you have to get a feeling for it, you have to practice it, you need a little bit of training, but then also exploring your own way of doing it, and then you become more proficient. And I think there's a lot of design thinking coaches out there and trainers, they know the buzzwords, but they're not really kind of experienced in applying design thinking. And this is probably one of the constraints I'm seeing many times, that we're not using it in a professional manner.
Yeah, I think I understand your point. I mean, like, for example, like in Indonesia, people thought that design thinking is all about post-its on the wall. Oh, there's already design thinking. Very interesting. Okay, but then I think, like, I agree that the very foundation, very fundamental of it, that you have to have the right mindset to actually implement design thinking right. Okay, now let me just read the question for Danny first, and then we'll continue with you again. So, Pak Danny, the question is, after successfully prompt to implement the design thinking in many industries, what most meaningful part to the people who are affected? Did you have any measure? Do you have any, measurement of the key element that proved the design thinking is delivered well for long run, for your point of view? This is from Khalid M, Universitas Nasional Jakarta.
Thank you very much for the good question. Again, so design thinking is a mindset and also a methodology that can help you to create innovation, let's say. So the ultimate goal of innovation is a behavioral change. So if you can see the change in your organization, especially in your corporate culture, in how they approach things, the problems, and also to create the right solution based on the customer's needs, I think it's a good way to say that it's already successfully implemented within your internal organization. And a lot of matrices that you can also apply, but you need to put it into your individual KPI to your employee, let's say. So put, let's say, about 20 until 30% of their work should be on the project basis to conduct this kind of like design thinking. And whenever the successful story came out from the project, that they should be rewarded with a good incentive. So again, I think it should be also a part of the overall HR strategy in how you like to infuse and also to make it into a corporate culture, but applying the design thinking. I hope this answer helps and addresses your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I found another interesting question, actually. Let me just read it again for you. Okay, so this is from Pak Rahmadan. So he's from PT Pusri. I believe that PT Pusri is the fertilizer, or like the agriculture fertilizer company, right? So why do you relate design thinking playbook with the digital transformation? Does it work with the digital culture transformation as well?
Yes, basically, why we put like so much emphasis on the digital transformation. There was many books about design thinking already on the market. So when we published the design thinking playbooks, there were already 4,000 titles about design thinking, and we realized, we had like this second wave applying design thinking with the digital transformation. That's the reason why we put a lot of emphasis, not just explaining the first part of the book, so additional elements of design thinking, how you use it for product design, service design, process design, but also going a little bit farther and saying, look, you can also apply it in creating new ecosystems. You can apply it in creating like customer interaction based on artificial intelligence. You can use like experience in autonomous driving. You can create kind of new solutions out of big data analytics and design thinking. So for us, it was more like, this was the zeitgeist, it's this time saying, how to apply design thinking, the digital transformation. But the book, and also the methodology can be used in the old world, but also in the digital one, and especially in the transformation, because I'm also seeing at the moment a lot of things happening in the physical space and the virtual space, and it's combined. It's not like a pure digital experience. So sometimes you need something to interact. You have a physical element, you have some experiences, you go later, you hang out with people on a physical space, really depending on the service and product you're developing. But I think it has always those elements. And what I have learned over the pandemic and COVID-19, we need these kind of physical elements, because going to a shop, touching something, going to a real restaurant, socializing, these are really important parts, and I think we get like in the future more things combining like tangible products and services with the digital world. And then of course it's needed. And I think all companies somehow have to deal with the digital transformation, because your customer will reaching out over different channels. You like to engage with them over different channels. So there are many kind of touch points in the physical, but also in the digital space.
Okay, so yeah, so if I can rephrase that for the participant, that means that even before, like in the digital transformation, a lot of times that we need to engage, or we need to embed a lot of digital tools, right? So before we're doing that, we need to understand what kind of problems that we want to solve by doing the digital transformation, and then we can do a better planning and also decide what kind of tools and even channels that we can leverage the result of the digital transformation, right?
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I have a question for Danny first. This is from Hari Kapota from L'Oreal. Okay, actually it's from Michael Lewrick, but then I think Danny can also answer. So in the early stage of implementing design thinking mindset and process in the organization, do we have to conduct formal training to whole cross-function organization? Or is it possible to use design thinking concept in creating new services to existing customers?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Pak Hari Kapota. And the answer, yes, it is, and also definitely that very, very important. We need to conduct the design thinking training to the overall and across function within the organization in order to get and to start it with the right mindset first. And I believe also when we have the right first start, for our mindset, we can understand better our customers. And even this is also applies to our sales and marketing team. A lot of things and our experiences, sales and marketing team usually say that they self already understand about the market. But what we ask, when we ask deeper, so how do you understand about the market? They said coming out from the market is project. So have you gone to the field? Have you asked directly? And have you been with the customers? Not everything is as what we thought. Yeah, I mean, maybe they just received the market research result and then they just sitting behind their desk and then just to understand it from the report. So that's why it's very, very important to make everyone is aligned. And again, the other thing is design thinking is a mindset and it's also a process. Even though that we encountered, let's say, the first mistake, the first failure, that's okay, that's fine. But also need a good direction and a strong push, yeah, strong agreement, yeah, from all the team, especially from the top to bottom. And the other thing that is it possible to use design thinking concept in creating new services to existing customer? Yes, definitely yes. So we have also experiences like in oil and gas consumers and also in banking when we conducted design thinking to find a lot of options and solutions to create a new features or new products from the existing product as well to the existing customers. So if you can see that usually in the first part of conducting a project, we had this kind of like a strategic kind of review. Let's say using the ANSOF matrix. Where do we want to go? Whether we like to develop our market, whether we want to develop our product, or do we want to diversify our business, or even we want to penetrate the market deeper with our existing products. So after we understand about this strategic goal, and then we can conduct this design thinking method as well to our customers. Hopefully the answer addresses the, hopefully this addresses your questions, Pak. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so thank you. Okay, thank you, Danny, for the answer. Okay, let me just continue. I found a very interesting question. So I think I'm going to ask Michael to answer this. This is from Adi from ExxonMobil. He asked, how do we strengthen focus on opportunities in design thinking? Because, you know, like in the exploration methods are widely open, and a lot of times at the consumer's end, or like customer or users, a lot of times their site keeps changing and very fast. So how do you, how do you strengthen the focus, by the way?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. Thank you for raising it. And it's getting more dynamic, you know, customer behavior is changing. We're getting new technologies, enabling kind of new ways of engaging with the customer. And I think it's a more dynamic process than in the past, you know, and I was mentioning already, you know, update on a regular basis your persona concepts, you know, also try to gather information and data from your customers, and also trying to apply like data-driven innovation, because you have more insights about your customers from data. You can customize product, you can create new value proposition, you can create new features and experiences. And this really helps them to have like a cycle of continuous improvement of your product and services. And at the same time, you know, takes the effort of updating the personas, because I think that's the most important critical part in the entire process. And it never stops, you know, it's not like in the old days that you create something, you put it on the market, it's good for 10 years. Probably kind of, you know, every year you have to refocus, and sometimes in even shorter cycles, you know, to be up to speed with the market, to have like really kind of the needs captured from your customers. And this is, I know, a lot of work, but on the other hand, if you like to create outstanding solutions, it's worth doing it. And usually, you know, you're also successful if you're adapting quickly to the market requirements.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Yes, I found another interesting questions. Hold on. Okay, this is from Priyo Christianto. He's from KF Business Accelerator. Hold on, wait. it moves up. Okay, so this is for Michael. It was so inspiring and happy to get a great opportunity to join this webinar. I just want to ask a little about your last slide, specifically at the point of MVE. In some cases, there are so many issues to make MVE work properly because the team mindset itself, or there are some invention or invisible hands, such as from corporate management, that we cannot make MVE as good as we plan as at the first time we start. How do we handle this situation with design thinking method?
I think there's a lot of human behaviors involved in politics and other things. So what I'm trying to do, I try to involve people as early as possible. You know, all these kind of decision makers, stakeholders, you know, try to co-create and involve them in the early stage of the process. Then plan your journey. You know, we have seen, Danny has shown the stakeholder map. I always outlining, you know, saying, you know, we need probably specific arguments, like, you know, giving also benefits to internal stakeholders in the company that they will give the buy-in, money, budget, you know, whatever is needed to make it happen. So this is more like kind of a way of storytelling, convincing, you know, getting everyone on the same journey and then be successful in the end. So I think, you know, it's also kind of depending all the time about the culture of your company, actually how innovation is perceived, you know, how much risk, you know, all these stakeholders will take. And I see at the moment a lot of companies are saying, look, we did really nicely over the last 12 months because with COVID-19, you know, we had the best results ever in revenues, especially like banks, you know, and financial services, you know, they say, we don't like to innovate at the moment. And I think this is one of the points that you have to say, well, look, you know, this was probably kind of, you know, a short-term effect or 12 months, you know, but if you're looking 2, 3, 4 years down the road, you might have to position yourself within business ecosystem. You have to participate, or you have to initiate or orchestrate one. And this really kind of is opening the eyes and saying, oh, maybe we have to think about these things. But in the end of the day, you know, it's also kind of the appetite of risk from decision makers. It's kind of the personal awareness about innovation and technology in many elements. So I don't think there's like kind of one kind of phrase I can hand out and say, you know, this is solving all the problems, because I think it's really complex when it comes to like human interaction and decision making within large organization companies.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I have like two questions. I think this will be like the last two questions. Okay, the first one, actually this question is the same, is being asked by Mas Ranggi Rahman from PT Nindya Karya and also Mbak Puspita Greenhope. So they asked about, you know, in the process of design thinking, how to measure failure in the ideation process, and then how you know, how to develop effective solution, how to measure it. That's you know, that is the question from Mas Ranggi Rahman and Puspita from Greenhope. Mas Ranggi Rahman is from PT Nindya Karya.
Okay, I think it's always hard to measure, right? When it comes to like innovation, creativity, and all these elements we are doing, how are you going to measure it? You know, and at the same time, I like to say you can measure everything. So it's not like really the point about you can't. What I usually do when it comes to like the ideation phase, I'm looking into the 4 part of the design lenses. So it's desirability, feasibility, and viability. So if they're kind of, you know, tick box, you know, and we're fitting into the customer needs, you know, we are a good step ahead, you know, creating something with value, you know, and then basically feasibility, can we really build it, you know, and visibility in most of the digital products, I don't think it's an issue nowadays, because technology can solve most of the problems. I've not seen any project in the last 12 months we could not solve the feasibility part with technology. Everything is ready to go. It's more like the question about infrastructure, how much money you like to spend, but we have like technology-wise everything in place. You have APIs, you can connect. I don't think there's any major problem. And then of course, like viability, what's the business model behind, how you make money out of the solution, how you realize your market opportunity in a manner that you get some profits out of it. And this is always a challenge, because, you know, the different ways of designing the business model, the different ways of investing first, having kind of direct but also indirect value streams. But that's also kind of something you can simulate, you know, and say, you know, we know from other projects, we know from other benchmarks with other companies what does work, what will not work, and then basically again it's also testing. You know, if you like to know a price point, you know, you can build an MVP and having the price points validated and many other things. So for me, it's more like, you know, going back to the design lenses, making tick boxes behind these three elements, and then decide a little bit in comparison to other ideas, to other solutions, what is really kind of serving as mentioned in these dimensions. And then you have more clarity. And in the end of the day, you know, my advice is listen to your stomach feelings, because this is something, you know, most appropriate if you're an entrepreneur, business leader. You know, it's still kind of you validate, you know, I see potential, you know, I'm believing this idea, and then go ahead. But before, with design thinking, you can basically reduce the risk, you know, taking tick boxes around these lenses, and then basically having something created at least your customer likes to use on a later stage.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this will be the last question for today. Thank you so much for everyone who already posted questions. This will be the last one. This is from Fahmi Farasidia from Indonesian School of Graphology. So her question is, if you can see us working for a school, if we'd like to create a course or like a school that has never existed before, so what kind of form, what is the best form of prototype get the most effective? Because, you know, like it's a school, right? So does it have to start with the curriculum or how? So she asked for some enlightenment on that.
Okay. Okay. So actually, we do have also experiences in helping business schools in conducting curriculum on design thinking. And we also implemented this, and it already became a regular subject in the business schools curriculum for the students, like in MMUI, Prasta Mulia, and also right now in ITMI International Business School. So again, the right thing to do is to, first of all, understanding what from their need as well, from the school's need. So why do they want to have this kind of like design thinking curriculum and subject? So what is the end goal? Let's say that for MMUI, they wanted for their students to be able to work effectively, collaboratively, and also efficiently to finish their study on time, and also to have a great experience whenever they study in every subject in MMUI. So we create this kind of like experience of curriculum like design thinking within the school. So maybe that's kind of like an example that maybe you can refer to.
Okay, awesome. So that will be the last questions to be answered in our webinar session for today. Thank you so much to participants that already posted the questions on the Q&A panel. We really appreciate it. However, you know, we didn't have the time. The time is very limited today to answer all your questions, but hopefully we're going to have another webinar that you will be interested and also ask more questions about design thinking in the future. So thank you, Michael, for actually answering the questions from the participants for the Q&A session, as well as Mas Dani to participate in the Q&A session. So next, to summarize our webinar today, I'd like to rephrase some interesting quotes that I captured from Michael's presentation, which is that, you know, we must have process, mindset, tools, and methods to create real impact. And then design thinking can be utilized to utilize long-term values. And in design thinking is essential to have the beginner's mindset, which is we have to explore, discover things, testing out things. I think that is like the very essential elements that if you want to start applying design thinking for your organization. As well as for Mas Dani, it is already visualized in his last slide. He mentioned about that we have to emphasize with more qualitative and deep dive when we want to understand our targeted customer. And then we can explore some interview techniques such as ask more stories instead of like not confirmation. And we can do offline prototyping such as pen, paper, carton, which is like very, very easy to actually access. Okay, thank you so much for Michael Lewrick and also Dani Kosasih for the amazing presentations for today's webinar. We're really excited and really appreciated your time as well as your effort to be in this webinar.